All right, here at home, the first full day of testimony in the second murder trial of Karen Reed, the Massachusetts woman accused of killing her boyfriend, a Boston police officer. Well, Reed is back in court today as the victim's mother was emotional on the stand. She recalled the day that her son was killed. Reed had pleaded not guilty and has maintained her innocence after prosecutors say she intentionally struck John O'Keefe with her SUV and then left him to die following a night of drinking in January of 2022. The jury was unable to reach a verdict in her initial murder trial last year. So joining me for more on this is ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer. So first of all, Brian, what do we hear here from the victim's mother and some of those other witnesses on the stand today?
And today, probably still continuing on. But we heard, as you said, just her recitation of what happened on the day in which her son was found dead, and also the response on the morning after when Karen Reed had come to the home of John O'Keefe when the family was mourning to ask for some of her belongings in their room, but also take what the prosecution says was the murder weapon, her SUV that was in the driveway, and the prosecution is trying to argue that in some way, shape, or form, consciousness of guilt. But going even further back, we saw earlier today, one of the women who was with Karen Reed when they arrived at the scene when they first found John O'Keefe's body, that being Carrie Roberts, and her testimony is very contentious at times, with the defense trying to poke holes in her testimony, saying, well, you said this during the grand jury testimony, you're saying this now, and getting, I think, as close to the line, if not actually crossing it, basically saying that she's perjured herself in front of the grand jury, lying in some crucial moments.
And Brian, we know the last trial ended in a hung jury. So what, as you're analyzing this, right, what makes prosecutors confident they could perhaps secure a conviction this time around?
Well, like, point one would be that individuals like Peggy O'Keefe didn't testify in the first trial, and they're trying to bring in new evidence, as we saw with Karen Reed doing multiple interviews with multiple networks, and the prosecution believes that some of those statements are inconsistent with the arguments that were raised in the first trial and also show consciousness of guilt. And so even though Karen Reed didn't testify in the last trial, and she very well may not testify in this trial, some of her words may be used against her, and they believe, the prosecution, that that can convict her.
Interesting. All right, Brian Buckmeyer, our thanks to you as always.